What's up, guys? This is Paul from Certified Martial Arts, Certified Jiu-Jitsu headquarters, and today I'm talking about what the heck does it take to be a blue belt, what does it mean to be a blue belt, and what do you have to do generally to get a blue belt. This is a hot topic of discussion, and I've reviewed pretty much all the major resources in online instructionals. I've talked to literally hundreds of instructors and developed my own blue belt curriculum that helps people really accelerate in getting to the blue belt. So what is a blue belt? The blue belt is the first belt that you earn as a BJJ practitioner. So you're essentially given a white belt when you walk into any gym, and you have to earn your blue belt. There are generally spoken 5 major belts: white, blue, purple, brown, and black. There are technically other belts, but you would be very lucky to live long enough to be able to get one of those, and we'll talk about that at a later time. But the blue belt is really what people are eyeing when they come into jiu-jitsu. They want to know, how do I get there? And there is no universally set curriculum, but as someone who has a legal background, I like rules. I like to see something mapped out. I like to see written curriculum. I like to take notes. I like to take handwritten notes. I have literally thousands of pages of notes that I've taken over the years. And so this is kind of my rubric that I want to give you as a burgeoning new white belt trying to become a blue belt, and give you a little bit of framework on what the expectations are on pretty much every gym I've ever been to. Number one, you're going to have to learn movement. You're going to have to learn to move like a grappler. This means you're going to have to learn how to fall. You're going to have to learn how to get up. You're going to have to learn things like shrimping, even though there's a little controversy on how much you should be shrimping. I think it's still a very worthwhile move when done correctly. You're going to learn how to break fall. You're going to learn how to forward roll, backwards roll, all the different ukemi or movement that you're going to have to memorize and really incorporate and do seamlessly. And that takes a different amount of time for everyone. I've seen kids walk into the door and pick it up like that. They can do everything. They can granby, they can roll. And I've seen students who take months and months and months of self-practice and time off the mats to really get good forward rolls and backwards rolls. So that is going to be dependent person by person. But there's going to be what we refer to in the legal field as minimum competency. So you're going to have to be minimally competent in a broad range and breadth of moves. Number two, one of the first things that you're going to have to learn is going to be escapes. Danaher talks about this as being a fundamental component. And this is something, too, that I noticed. Like when a brand new white belt goes in and I can just lay on top of them for 5, 6, 7 minutes and they can't escape, that is something that they have to work on, and that's something that I really try to teach to my students right away. Is they need to be able to escape multiple times in a 5-minute roll against a various number of belts. Now, if a big, huge purple belt or black belt gets on top of you and you can't escape right away, that happens. We're all struggling there. But if someone your own size, relative belt level, or experience level can hold you down for long periods of time, you're going to have to work on your escapes. The next thing that you're going to have to learn is going to be the lingo, right? So that's one thing that I think a lot of people really overlook. Like, you're going to have to learn the definitions of what is a guard, what is side control, what is mount. A lot of people come in with anxiety because they're like, I have no context. They don't know the lingo or the language, and so they lack that context. And so I hope to provide you that context in the future with other videos on how you can walk into any jiu-jitsu academy in the world. I've trained all over the world, in the United States, trained in Brazil with black belts in Brazil. And so I'm going to give you the tools so you can walk into any school and be like, oh, we're working on side control today. I know what that means. Or we're working on mount escapes. We're working on, there's all kinds of this alphabet soup of things that you're going to learn trying to get to blue belt. And I always tell my brand new students, don't try to memorize the names. Try to memorize the relative positions, like when legs are interlocking or something like that. You'll learn the names over time. That just comes with a lot of repetition. Another thing that you're going to have to learn, depending on the academy that you go to, is you're going to have to learn a certain number of takedowns. Like in my schools, we do not pull guard. I don't teach guard pulling. And so you have to be a bit more proficient in takedowns, both judo and wrestling style takedowns in my academy, than you might in other schools. A lot of other schools do a lot of guard pulling, and they start almost all of their matches seated whenever they're doing general sparring. Some other things that your coach is going to look for is they're going to look for, do you have a good attitude when you show up? Are you being consistent, right? There's these intangibles that, it's really the intangibles that make jiu-jitsu not universal, because each program has different set requirements, but you're going to have a minimum base that you're pretty much going to see universally, and that's going to be a certain number of sweeps, which is going from a bottom position to a top position. There's a certain number of basic submission attempts you're going to have to be minimally familiar with. You might not master them. You might get really good at an armbar or a triangle, something like that, once you learn what those are. But you do need to at least understand and be aware of what those positions are and what the basic submissions are. You're going to have to learn the mechanics of strangulation versus different joint locks and understanding what the interplay is between those two. You're going to have to learn a little bit of strategy. And in my academy, you're going to have a minimum amount of grit, which is where you're kind of pushing past your limits, such as tapping to pressure really early on. When you first start out, you should be tapping to pressure anytime you're uncomfortable. But over time, you should build up a tolerance where you're really trying to work through and maybe suffer just a little bit more than when you first started. And for some of you, you have to learn not to suffer so much. So that is a two-sided coin. So there really is no universal basic outline of what a blue belt is on any given day, but there are going to be common themes on what they can do. They're going to know how to move, they're going to know how to escape, they're going to know how to attack in at least 5 basic ways. They're going to know how to protect themselves. They're going to know hopefully a little bit of self-defense, how to protect their head, how to close the distance in the old school Gracie way. And generally, when you're trying to get a blue belt, consistency is the key. That's going to be the biggest thing, I think, is if you're on the mats 2, 3, 4 times a week, from anywhere from 8 to 18 months, and you have a really good shot of getting a blue belt. But they don't just give them out freely, and your academy should hold you to a really high standard. So if they're just passe, giving out blue belts to anyone who's just showing up and going through the motions, there should be a little bit more than that, and hopefully you hold yourself to a higher standard. So I hope this helps. I hope this gives you just a basic outline of like what are the expectations of a blue belt, how do I get a blue belt, and if this gets enough of a response, I've actually unfortunately lost all of my original filming from the White to Blue Belt course that I developed during the pandemic, but I will reshoot a new blue belt curriculum for YouTube if I can get enough viewers and enough people who are liking and subscribing to the channel. So hopefully you guys will like my material.